everyone. So good evening. I am Niveddita, officially in my third year pursuing electronics and communication and a member of Gindi Times, the official campus magazine of CEG, ACT and SAP. And today we are going to have a session on GRE. So before starting with the official part of the interview, tell us about you and your interest, Anna.
So hi, my name is Keshav. I completed my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Anna University CEG campus in 2018, and since then I've been working for Vedanta. I applied for my master's in mechanical engineering in 2019. I initially planned to go in 2020, but because of the coronavirus pandemic, I've deferred my admission to 2021. I wrote my GRE in the year I wrote it in August of 2019, and I wrote my TOEFL exam in 2019 September.
Okay, Anna. So proceeding with the next question, how was the GRE test administered?
So initially, before the pandemic, we had a center where it was electronically administered. So you'd have official centers where you could go and take the exam. Right now, because of the pandemic, they do have you can take it from home as well on your personal laptop. Of course, they have a lot of different rules and regulations for that now. It's electronically administered.
Okay, Anna. So what is the structure of the test?
So the GRE, they have 3 sections. The first one is AWA. That is, they test your ability to, you have to write 2 essays basically. So the first essay is an issue essay in which they give you a statement. And for example, you could be asked to give your personal opinions about a particular topic. For example, imagination and creativity, is it worth more or is it more valuable than having experience in a particular domain or field? So this could be a topic that they could give you, which you would have to write about 300 to 400 words about. They give you half an hour to write about it. And then you have another essay, which is the argumentative essay, in which they give you an argument, and you have to pick a side, and you have to reason why it is that your position on that issue or that argument is the correct position to take. So after that, you have 5 sections of your quants and your verbal, which would be either 3 quants or 3 verbal, which you wouldn't know before the exam. You would find out only on the day of the exam. So it would be either quants, verbal, quants, verbal, quants, or verbal, quants, and verbal. And one of these sections would be a research section, for which you wouldn't be scored. How you perform on that section wouldn't be considered towards your final score. So basically, you'd have 4 sections which count toward your score, as well as 2 extra essays that you would write for a scale of a score out of 6.
Okay. So when is the apt time to start preparing for GRE?
Well, admissions generally start in November or December of any year. So it's good to have your GRE score at hand at least 2 to 3 months before you actually start preparing for sending in your applications and stuff. So of course it also depends on how many times you are prepared to give the GRE. Some people prefer to give the GRE sometime in June or July, so that it would give them an opportunity to take the test again in case they needed to, say in August or September. I honestly believe that taking the GRE once is sufficient. So it's a good time to I would say is maybe to start preparation in January or February. Take a mock test, see how it is that you perform, and so that by the time July or August comes around, you'll be ready to give your GRE exam.
Okay. So how should one prepare? How many hours per week do you prepare? Please do enlighten us about your preparation schedule.
The thing about the GRE is everyone starts off at a different point. So, for example, obviously everyone wants to score like a 340 and a 340. So the thing is, the first step towards preparing for the GRE is understanding where it is that you stand at. So ETS has 2 free mock tests. So I generally recommend that you take the first free mock test and see what score it is that you get. And based on the score that you get, generally people if you get somewhere between a 315 and you're a 315 plus score, then you may not need to put in as many hours. But if you get below 315, then you may need to put in more hours. That's basically how I see it. So if you get above 315, personally, I believe that preparing for 1 hour every day for about 3 to 4 months would make you that would be sufficient for you to score above a 320 or a 330. Below 315, you have to put in a bit more effort, 2 to 3 hours a day. Again, as 315 or 320, 330, whatever these scores are, these are composite scores. So obviously, because the verbal and the GRE, you get 2 separate scores for each section. You may want to split that 1 hour as more for verbal and more for quant, depending on where it is that you personally find your weakness.
Okay. Is coaching classes necessary for GRE preparation or self-preparation is enough?
I think that also depends on the individual as well. Personally, I took online coaching classes because I didn't have that self-motivation, you could say. I wanted someone to keep pushing me. But people who are self-motivated, I believe that, they don't necessarily need to go for GRE coaching. ETS has a lot of official material that they have out there. So, if you practice that material and you go, you search a little bit for yourself on the internet, you get a lot of mock tests as well that not necessarily what ETS provides, but also other people provide for free. If you take those mock tests, I think that will be more than sufficient. But if you need someone to keep pushing you, then online coaching classes are a really good option.
Okay, so what are some of the books you have referred and websites for learning and for taking mock tests?
Okay, so ETS provides 2 free mock tests. Apart from that, they also have some paid tests that you can take. You can buy some of the mock tests from the internet. So those give you the best. They give the most accurate, they most accurately reflect how the actual GRE exam will be, because they take questions that have been retired from the test and they put those questions in these tests. Other mock tests that you take, which you may find on the internet, which I personally didn't take any of those. They will not be giving you an accurate depiction of how the exam will be. But apart from that, for questions as such, there are a lot of books out there, including Manhattan's 5 LV book of questions. That book is very, very good for quants. I personally, I couldn't finish the entire book, but it's recommended that you finish the entire, all the questions in the book, which will make you extremely prepared for the quant section. Apart from that, you have the ETS official guide, and you also have official books for the quants and verbal section separately, with just question bank sort of questions. So these 3 books with the Manhattan book should make you more than sufficiently prepared for the exam. And ETS is a free mock test as well as a mock test that you pay for and you write. Those will give you a very good, give you the scores that you get on them. You can, plus or minus 5 marks, you can assume will be what your actual GRE score will be. So, yeah.
So which section should one focus on to get good scores in GRE?
That again comes down to a question of which score is important to you. For example, as an engineer, quant score is much more important than a verbal score. I mean, what the score that you get on the verbal section. So the thing is also that a lot of times people, they want to score a 340 on 340, which, it's a good thing to want to score that much. But at the same time, universities don't require you to score a 340 on 340. So what they have is they have sectional cutoffs, as in from previous years applicants, they release what the average GRE score of each, average score of all the applicants who got admitted into that university. So for example, for some universities such as Stanford, it's around 328, 330. For universities like Georgia Tech, it's around 325. So again, what these scores are, they are again broken down into two components. There is your verbal and your con score. When you're applying for an engineering degree, your con score is much more important than your verbal score. You will have to give more focus on your con score in general. If you're going for a non-engineering, non-STEM degree, then your verbal score may be more important than your con score. So again, it's always safe to score above 167 in the con section for an engineer because that is the 90th percentile score on the GRE test. Verbal generally anywhere above a 70 to 80th percentile, which is around 154, 158, is a sufficient score. So like again, a lot of people like they aim for a very high score on the GRE, which is not exactly necessary for them. Which maybe is something we can discuss about later on. But yeah, like it's important to know what the university wants from you, what score they expect from you, rather than just trying to score a 170 on 170 in both sections.
Okay, Anna. So GRE has an adaptive algorithm in test by adjusting the difficulty level. So how does this computer algorithm work?
So basically, the exact working is not exactly known, but people have come up with their own hypotheses or they made some assumptions. So basically, like based on the number of questions that you attempt correctly in the previous sections, your subsequent sections become either more difficult or maintain the same level of difficulty or become easier. So some people have believed that it's somewhere around if you get 14 or 15 questions right out of the 20 questions per section, you will end up with a harder section. The subsequent section will be harder. Similarly, if you score between 10 to 14, if you get 10 to 14 questions correct, the level of difficulty will remain the same, and anything below 10 questions correct, you will get an easier section. So the trick to getting a very high score on the GRE is to ensure that you get as many questions correctly in your first section, so that your second section is harder. And within each section, all the questions are worth the same. There's no harder sections are not worth more than easier questions. But overall, your entire section itself would be worth more if you got a harder section, and your overall value of the section would be less if you got an easier section as a subsequent section. So it's the computer adaptive, like the adaptation that occurs, it occurs across all the questions put together. It's not necessarily that you got all the hard questions in one section right, but you got the easy ones wrong. It would not necessarily mean that you will get a harder section the next time. It depends on the raw score of number of correct questions that you get in each section.
Okay, so which universities and countries accept GRE scores?
US primarily requires a GRE score. Apart from that, Germany, certain universities accept it, but it's not mandatory. Canada as well does not mandatorily require the GRE score. GRE is actually very much, United States specific. That is where GRE is both accepted as well as mostly mandatory.
Okay, so for pursuing masters in business, is GRE test enough or should we write GMAT along with it?
Initially, GMAT was required by most universities, but nowadays they've started accepting GRE scores as well. It's a good idea, to just look up the specific university that you're applying to and see whether they accept GRE scores. Of course, right now a lot of universities are waiving off the GRE and the GMAT test scores, because of the pandemic. But generally, it's very university specific, the requirements.
Okay, so along with GRE, should we take any other tests like TOEFL, IELTS for pursuing masters abroad?
Again, the United States is very specific for requiring TOEFL exam. Not many universities, they don't recognize the IELTS exam yet. But by writing IELTS, you can also apply to universities in Canada, the UK, Europe as well. Because those countries, they don't recognize TOEFL, they recognize IELTS. So of course that's changing slightly. So IELTS is also gaining more popularity among students, and as well as universities abroad are starting to accept them, including United States based universities. So the point of IELTS and TOEFL is just to show your English proficiency. They're not very difficult exams. Just being able to speak a little bit of fluent English, being able to write, basic sentences or reading, basic paragraphs and, answering questions based off of that, you can easily score pretty well. So these exams, they're merely like, I could say, a formality. Universities, they just require you to score beyond a certain mark. For example, 100, like on TOEFL, which is scored out of 120. Certain universities just require you to score 90 out of 120. Certain, a few expect 100. It's not really, it's not something that either helps or, affects your chances of getting into any university that you're applying to.
Okay, so what should be one's GRE score to get into esteemed universities around the world?
The GRE score, it acts as like a filter. When you're applying, a lot of people, like American universities or any other university, they get a lot of applicants every year. So that initial filtration process, they generally take the GRE score as that as the parameter that they use to filter out. So like I said, you have average GRE scores. But again, why they have average GRE scores is because these universities, there are a lot of times when people have gotten into very good universities with lower GRE scores, like around 320, 315, 310 even sometimes. And this is because the rest of the profile is very good. So because these universities take their approach is not basically to say you scored so much on a GRE test and therefore you will get admission or your CGPA is so much. They take into account all of these other factors as well. So generally what I would say is go to each individual university that you want to apply to, see what the average score of a person, of an applicant who got into that university was, and try to score that average score of the university which requires the highest score. For example, if you're applying to Stanford, MIT, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State University, let's say that of all of these four universities, Stanford requires the highest average GRE score of around 330. And it would be safe to try to aim for the 330, and you would be sort of safe for the other universities. A lot of these coaching institutes also try to portray GRE score as the one defining factor of your entire profile for getting into a good university, which is not actually the case. Your GRE score is just one very small component, because the moment you cross that threshold score that you need, after that the GRE score does not factor anywhere into your application process. It does not increase your chances of getting into the university. For example, if you are competing against a student who has similar credentials from you, they're not going to see, okay, who has the higher GRE score, and they're not going to decide the admit based on that. They look at your LOS, they look at your SOPs, they look at your resume. So all of these factors come into play at that point of time. So it's like GRE, you just need to get that threshold score, which you can see from every university's website, what score it is that they require on average from their students.
Okay, so how long are the GRE scores valid?
So from the date of taking it, it's 5 years. You can send those scores for up to 5 years. I think up to 10 years also it's somewhere in their database, they say, but I don't know what you can do with that. But up to 5 years you can send those scores to universities.
Okay, Anna. So the last question of this session, what are your plans for the future? Tell us about your dream university.
Okay. So I've gotten an admit from Georgia Tech Institute of Technology in Atlanta, in Georgia. So after pursuing my master's, I hope to work for a company like Tesla or SpaceX. So the thing about doing a master's abroad is that it gives you rich experience, like not only in terms of your technical aspects, but also like you also get the opportunity to like meet a lot of people. So that kind of experience you don't really get much in much other places. So hopefully, like down the line, the dream is to like start a startup in like some very core domain of mechanical engineering, somewhere along aerospace or automotive lines. Hopefully, it will be at the cross section of both, with flying vehicles and stuff. But yeah.
Wow, congratulations for getting a seat in abroad, Anna. So thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. So GRE Times wishes you all the best for your future endeavors, Anna.